Special meeting to order this evening. As stated, Candy, please collect the roll.
Mrs. Milius?
Here.
Mr. Ewing? Mrs. Sealing?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Updike?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Anderson? Absent.
So we got. All right, very good. First item is approval of the agenda.
So move. Second.
It's moved. Any discussion or additions to the agenda? Candy, please click the vote.
We'll start with Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Mrs. Milius? Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Please rise. Join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you, board members. Thank you, administration, for being here this evening. We have two discussion items this evening. Certainly Kansas Association of School Board Superintendent Search Timeline, as well as an overview of the superintendent search. So with that, Dr. Burkle, or we can call up Dr. Britton Hart from Kansas Association of School Boards.
Sure. Yeah, I need one for Katie. What do you say?
Well,
One
that's, oh, you. One that's found.
Okay. I think I've written it up last week, but I can find
Okay, good evening. Everybody hear me okay? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us have a little bit of time tonight. And I know the special board meeting, you have to take another night out of your evening. So as we get started, January is Board Appreciation Month. So I want to thank you for your service and appreciate what you do for your kids in your district and for the state of Kansas. So thank you for that. Just a quick overview tonight. So as Mr. Updike said, we're going to kind of review the 4 phases of the search, kind of get into a little bit more detail of phase 1, phase 2, and really just kind of make sure that we're going in the direction that the board desires. And as a board, you're really in the driver's seat of this process to ensure that this really accomplishes your goals and your objectives of the district. Nobody knows those outcomes better than you. And so part of this dialogue tonight is to ensure that we align our process and what we're going to do in support of this search. It is meet your needs. And then the last thing we'll do, we're going to review the timeline to ensure that that timeline is fits really your current schedule in the district, but also board members' schedule, kind of approve that. And then that will kind of jumpstart us into the process as we go through to identify candidates that will come in front of you at some point to interview and hopefully select one a successful candidate that we can fill this position. So Dr. Meckel is going to do a quick overview and then we'll kind of get into each phase and then review the timeline. So.
Good evening. I'm guessing you can hear me from this point. Dr. Hart just passed you this book out. If you remember this a few years ago, we used to use it in a 3-ring notebook, but we've actually found a better way to put it in one package. This is the Superintendent Search Notebook, and it's the process that we use to help guide boards. If you'll turn to the first page beside the table of content, we often refer to this as the handbook that allows you to walk the process from beginning to end. And so it's something that's critical for you to use. I'm going to talk about phase 1 because that's the phase you're ready for tonight. So as I look at this, it would be, if you turn to that next page, it says the overview of the process. I'll hit a couple. Did everyone get one?
Absolutely. Mr. Anderson, sir.
I'm sorry.
I left one page. Yep.
The overview of the process is important for you to understand it. And I think when I was here in December, I talked about the two most important things that you do is establish a vision for the district and then hire the superintendent who can execute that. That is your role as a board. And I would just reemphasize that as well. The idea that what you do as a board in governance then is executed by the person you hire. So the key for you is to find the right match for the district, and that's based upon the insights of this board. So the initial considerations are pretty simple. Oftentimes districts do succession planning. So they have someone from within or an internal candidate that they would consider a viable candidate. And if you have the right candidate, there's no reason to do a search. That's part of your decision. Now, often boards say we have a really good candidate, but we need to do a search. That's not uncommon. That is up to you. If you have a candidate that you desire from internal and then you want to do external as well, then that's the board that goes through the process. The internal candidates can apply for the same position as if they were anyone else. So that's your decision to make. And then we would also tell you that on occasion, you may have multiple internal candidates and you may have some that you don't think are the right fit. That's the case. It's very uncomfortable to lead them on through the process with the idea that they might get the job. If they're not the right fit, then the board gets to determine that, and that can be a discussion you have. I will tell you that at the bottom of that page, it talks about the confidentiality of the process. We're going to talk about, we do an online application process, but the reason the confidentiality is so important is people will not put their name out for a new position if they're in a current position until they have a chance to know that they're going to be in that finals list. So from the very beginning of the process, external candidates who apply for this position, they'll want to keep that information confidential until they've made the finalists. If they make the finalists, if they don't want their current district to know that they may be looking at another district. So that confidentiality piece is really important. And we try to make sure that we honor that very well. The only people who will know it when we actually literally visit with you as we go through the list of candidates that apply. So ultimately, the only people that will know, remember, it's personnel, therefore it's executive session content and discussions until you've determined who the finalists are, and then they become public knowledge at your discretion. The next thing we're going to talk about is on phase one is the announcement and timeline. We have up on the screen. That's great. The announcement and the timeline, basically you just establish the length of the search. As we talked about in December, sometimes searches range anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. That would be something the board would have input in as you plan forward. We make sure we market the vacancy, and we do that basically internally at the state level and externally at the national level. We're a member of the National Superintendent Searches Association. So basically any position that's posted in Kansas is posted nationally. I would tell you most of our applicants come regionally instead, mostly the surrounding states, but you could get someone from Ohio, you may get someone from Pennsylvania. You never know who's going to apply because the position will be posted state and nationally. The marketing phase, we'll work with you to design the right program to market your district. At a district of this size and success, you've already have some marketing information that you use. We'll implement that as well to talk about that. The next phase is the preparation for interviews. What we will do is we'll come together and do a characteristics or qualities forum in which we do two things. One, we come to the district and we meet with people you determine that you would like us to talk to. And that group is generally made up of patrons. It's made up of maybe site council members. Oftentimes it's your administrative team, a group of students, a group of teachers that you select. And we spend the day asking them basically 3 to 4 questions, primarily, what characteristics do you desire for the district in their new superintendent? So we gather a lot of information that day. We also do an online survey that will be linked to your website so people can gather that information from around the district. There's a lot of advantages to that. It's really easy. It's really quick for people to fill that out. There's disadvantages because it doesn't mean they have to be from your district to fill that out. Anybody can fill out an open survey. but it does provide a lot of information, both good insights for the board to consider. Once we've done that, then we spend time talking to you related to, this is what we've heard. Here's what the community members said. We've done many of these. We never identify who said what. I don't come in and say, well, the teachers told us, or the principals told us, but we'll make sure that you know exactly what everyone said that day. Or sometimes it takes 2 days. Once we've done that, we'll make sure we provide you with some salary comparisons. It would be people from around the state compared to the salaries that you have, so that you have a comfort zone into knowing what the market value is for your position that you're offering. We also provide you interview questions. We don't determine what questions you ask, but we provide questions so that they're vetted and they're offered so that they're, well, basically so that they're legal, if that makes sense. There are certain questions you can and can't ask in an interview, such as, gosh, Doug, you look really old. How old are you, Doug? Well, you can't ask those type of questions. And well, how many kids do you have? Those are questions. So we make sure we give you some questions that are vetted, that let you delve, and we'll work through that with you as we move through that. We do come in and review the application process with you. We'll select a screening team. Typically, it's people, peers from around the state. I'm sure that Wayne has served on some of those screening committees over the years. And so we'd ask peers to help support that as well. And then we would come to you with a recommendation of who the finalists could be. Now, our job is to not select the candidates. Our job is to recommend the people that have the closest fit to the characteristics the board determined were important to the district. So what we really do in this process is, between the background checks, so we know what they've done related to anything in the background areas related to external or criminal. We also know that we can find out what success they had in the district they were in. Were they someone who was very successful in that district? Were they someone who struggled? So part of our job is to make sure that we bring you people who are more than just a good interview. That makes sense. Some people are really good at interviewing. We want to make sure that they have demonstrated success in their background. So ultimately, we make recommendations, but we do not determine who the finalists are. That is up to the board to decide. There was a time, this is my 15th year being involved in this. There was a time when the positions might get anywhere from 15 to 30 applicants. That day has changed. There are fewer people involved in that now, fewer people searching to be superintendents. So I don't know what the numbers would be. I do know this is one of those destination districts where people would say this would be a great place to come. So you should have a nice pool to choose from, but I have no idea what number I would project. That's something we just can't project nowadays. As we review the applications with you, we'll walk you through and explain why we're recommending the people and why they're the right match. And then to a certain degree, we'll explain the reasons that some of them maybe didn't make your finals recommendation. The board needs to determine how many people you'd like to interview. Some districts choose to interview 3, some districts choose to interview 5. That would be something for the board to discuss. And on occasion, a district will say, well, draw the line for the best candidates. That might be, well, we were thinking about 5, but these 4 are the top, then they choose to do 4. That's really a board decision to work through. Phase 3 is the interview process. We've talked a little bit about that. I would tell you that you're going to have to spend some time together as a board when you do interviews. So if you interview 5 people, that's going to be 5 evenings in which you literally spend time together interviewing candidates. I'm not sure if that's why sometimes boards choose to do 3 or not. I'm not sure. But I do know that they spend time together going through the candidates. You'll have a chance to ask the interview questions. The key in that process is that you ask the same questions to all of the candidates, because you want to make sure you have a good vetting and a good equalization process. You want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to hear the same ideas and same questions. A couple of insights that we generally talk about. Make sure you delve. Make sure you dig a little deeper when they answer questions. And then make sure the questions match the needs that you want for the district. Remember, we'll provide sample questions, but the questions are yours to select. The finalist ranking is when you've had a chance to interview all candidates, is when you go through and determine which is the top candidate that you would like to extend your offer to. What we would tell you at this point, after you've interviewed everyone will know who the finalists are, but no one will know who the superintendent is until you've offered a contract. So that's the important confidentiality piece that the board plays. Make sure you work through that. And we always recommend that you pick a first choice and a second choice. That's really important because your first choice may say it's a wonderful offer, but they may also be someone else's first choice. Or something may come up in their life that change, and that happens on occasion. We've lost people because something happened in their family, they had a family emergency and had to change their mind. So be conscious of that. The negotiations and hiring phase, we'll have sample contracts for you. You will know what the salary expectations will be from the candidates, as well as what the average normal rate is for the districts of your size and your region. So you should be very comfortable with that. The contract itself is something that we provide samples of, but I'm sure you have one that you can work from as well. That's not something, you don't have to use ours. Making a contract offer as you negotiate that. On occasion, I'll have my people talk to your people. It happens, but pretty rarely. Usually it's a conversation between the board and the candidate. So then once you've done that, once you literally have a signed contract, then you can announce the name of the new superintendent. Until then, you want to keep that confidential. That's personnel, executive session. Once you've done that, we spend our time working for you. We'll come back once you've determined a date, and we'll do expectations and walk through that process with you. So you can explain to the new superintendent what your expectations are of them, and they get a chance to meet with you and explain what their expectations are of the relationship. And then we're always here to support the board and the superintendent through this process. I think I told you when I was here in December, we work for boards. And so our mission is to make sure that the board is successful. And of course, when we do that, we like to make sure we help you hire the right superintendent to make that happen. So, yes.
I see that you offer a 2-year contract right out of the gate. What's been the success with that?
That's a great question. The reason that we recommend a 2-year, you can go up to 3 legally for a superintendent. The reason we recommend 2 is most people will not pick up their family and give up their current job and move on the sense that I could be fired in 1 year. So that's why that the 2 years, particularly in the last 2 years, believe it or not, there's angry people. And so when they make a decision, I saw that look, when they make a decision to move their family, they want to make sure that they have a chance to have some stability. And so generally the contract is 2 years rolled over every year as you work through that. On occasion, some will say, we've got the right one, we're going to extend it to 3. So that was why that recommendation is there.
Have you seen any issues with that being too long?
Well, that's a good, I think on occasion, there's two parts to that. On occasion, there's been some that have not worked out in the first year. Sometimes it's because they have the board that hired them is after an election, there's a new board they work for. So that happens on occasion. That won't be the case here because you guys will all have been involved in the process, but that happens. And then there's strange things that happen throughout the state. So the good thing is if that were to happen in the first year, we'll be right back here to help you find the right one. That's part of our guarantee to make that work. We're here to serve you. So
You can certainly see the need to have 2 years to call somebody for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Mickle. Going to kind of review the timeline at this point. So if you want to kind of go to page 9,
And then also should be right inside your cover there, should be a draft timeline for you as well to kind of follow along as we go. This is really the opportunity for the board to have some interaction with each other and with Dr. Meckel and myself to say, does this timeline meet your needs? Do you feel like this is the appropriate steps that need to be taken? And so at this point, I'm just going to start at the very top of the timeline and kind of work down, and then really just kind of open up the questions and ensure that this schedule will meet your schedule and meet your needs as a district. And so as we start, we're really in the phase at the very top of finalizing. The position's been posted. We're accepting applications at this point. They are directed to our website through marketing and other ways that Dr. Meckel mentioned earlier. We're going to finalize that marketing with your clerk and your PR people here in the district to make sure that that presents itself in a way that sheds the most light and the best information that, like I said earlier, you know best about what is special about being part of this district and why people would want to be the next superintendent here. As we move down, Dr. Meckel mentioned to you, there's two ways to really seek out input from stakeholders. So the first one is that survey. If you elect to do the survey, it is something that we post on our website, Facebook, social media, et cetera. We really want to get just a general pulse of the community of what do they see as desired characteristics in that next superintendent. And so that would go to every patron in the district. At times it goes to grandma and grandpa that possibly are in the neighboring district as well, but really is open to anybody that would have a pulse and maybe come to your website or engage in your district in some fashion. So we see that there's a lot of benefit in that to get that input and also have that information as a board. I would say that that's one layer of data that you can look at as you start to make those decisions and kind of drill down on what you think is most critical for those characteristics as we screen applicants and we screen candidates. The second layer to that would be focus groups. So those characteristic focus groups. Dr. Meckel had mentioned that we will come into the district. Search this size will bring both of us, whether it's 1 day or 2 day. Our job is to really get a pulse from the people that are doing the work. So whether you have a perspective of a parent, a student, maybe a business partner that's in the community that works alongside the district, staff, classified, certified, et cetera. We want to get a pulse from them of what they think is critical. What have they been accustomed to? What they would like to see aspirationally. What are those leaders that they would like to see that maybe would be considered for this position? What characteristics do they think is most important? We kind of collect that information into really kind of a theme. If we're doing a qualitative study, we'll put some themes together along with the survey, give that to you in a report form. Ultimately, we're going to walk you through a similar process so you can take the input from your community and your stakeholders and really identify and drill down what you think are the most critical attributes that we would want to use as we start to identify candidates that meet your needs. And so that would take place. We would do the survey right away. So that way we could bring that back to you. We usually recommend that we leave that open for about a week. I don't know how many of you during COVID are tired of seeing surveys, but essentially a lot of people that give input is on day 1 or 2. And then we do a quick reminder and we'll finish it up. There's really no need. We don't see a lot of need to have it open much longer than that. So
Is it a week?
yeah, about a week span. Yep. I always like to, I think it's beneficial if you do it over a weekend. And so, you know, if you did like a Wednesday to Thursday, that gives people some opportunity to be thoughtful and take some time. As you continue to move down that timeline, that second layer of input would be those focus groups that would take place on February 1st. We would come into the district that day. We're at your, really your timeline, your disposal. We work directly with your clerk and your administration to design a schedule that really fits your stakeholders' needs. So whether it's students in the morning and staff throughout the day or staff and parents after school, we will design a schedule that you feel like will meet the needs of those individuals the best. We'll put that again into a form and a report for you to review, and then in turn, let you process that information as well. This proposed draft schedule, the applications would close on February 16th. We would screen those a few days after that on the 18th and then come back to you with some recommendations that Dr. Meckel outlined on the 21st. Based on this schedule right now, slated to do some interviews that first week of March. This would give you an opportunity as I visit with Mr. Updike as kind of in preparation to this meeting. This would allow you to really have this process in somewhat of that 8-week timeframe, but also have it wrapped up prior to spring break. The farther we get into the spring, the more difficult it is for a current sitting superintendent to be able to go to their board and say, you know what, I'm not happy with our marriage anymore, and I'm thinking about looking somewhere else. And so we think that the farther we get into the spring, that is not advantageous to hire the best possible person. So this would get us done there. You could have offer a contract prior to that spring break leaving. So thoughts about the timeline? Does it fit your needs? Does it fit your schedule? So we all know that this is not the only commitment that you have in your professional life.
Tuesday the 1st, and you're already meeting on the 31st.
Yeah, that's a good point. February 1st is a Tuesday and we have a board meeting on the 31st. Could we pull that back to the 30?
That was the date of the focus groups,
First.
though. Is that something that we have to be?
It said you would be meeting afterwards.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
normally during the day would just be the commitment of the stakeholders. In the evening, an hour to about 90 minutes would be the commitment that we would seek out from the board.
Can we?
They already have a work session that's on the calendar, so
On
if
the
you do it there,
31st.
you don't have to add
Right.
a special meeting is what I'm saying.
So it's a 5th meeting of the month or 5th Monday.
Yeah, they didn't really have anything else to talk about.
Right, instead of the first.
Seems like
Instead of like our work meeting, we would do this.
It
Is
would
that what
be
you're
the
saying?
work meeting,
Okay.
yeah. But we have to make sure they can schedule it first. Is that?
The night before.
I think, I know one of us, I think can make the 31st work.
Okay.
And obviously we have a team of 5 or 6 that we can certainly, depending on the schedule and the needs during that day, I think we can accommodate that. So.
Is there an option to move it to the 1st? Is there a conflict?
there's a.
Okay.
On the
Okay.
1st
On the
or the
first.
31st?
On the 1st.
Okay.
So I just, we already have a work meeting
Mhm.
scheduled.
Right.
It's already in part of our calendar and I think it's probably already posted.
Yeah.
If it
I
can
started
be
to say, you've got the
posted
31st already scheduled as a meeting.
Right.
And I saw that was on there the 1st. So since it's already on the 1st, you do not have to set up a special meeting. It's already scheduled as a meeting. If you needed to move it to the 31st, we'll just need to put it on the agenda on Monday so that you can add a special meeting on the 1st. It's whatever the board's pleasure.
I think we agreed that 31st would be fine since we had a work.
I would rather keep it on that night too.
And you can make that. Someone from KSB could be here to
Yep.
facilitate.
Yep.
I have a conflict with another board across
Oh.
a different part of the state, but we'll have people here to do this.
Okay.
So that's not a problem.
Let's look at the 21st of February. What does that look like in your schedule? And is that,
Well, before we get there, when we look at when were you saying the focus groups? That would be the 31st as well? Or no,
Yeah.
so we had 2 topics under that. We had the survey, which I didn't catch when that would go out, open and close. And then we had the focus groups, which would be the 31st.
yeah, so the survey we'll release as soon as Katie and I and Candy have a chance to
Okay.
kind of organize that. We'll send that out to post it, send it out to stakeholders, your communication channels. We will wrap that up and then that will be a report that I share with you that Monday night. So when you come in and talk about the focus group data, we'll also unpack the survey information as well.
Could we get a copy of like an example survey you sent or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I can send you, the one that we will send out that you can review. Absolutely.
Will this survey be similar to the value survey we just did through you guys?
That was.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would have to look at that to be able to answer that.
This will primarily
We
focus
did a
on the same
value
question.
Value.
What are the strengths of the district? What are the challenges of the district? What particular traits or skills are you looking for in your new superintendent? And then what is the most important? And so we'll define that. So you'll get into that. The good thing about the surveys is you can get a lot of it. bad things about it is it's open-ended. And they may throw out names, they may say that whatever we do this, we've got to find the next one is the best superintendent. I mean, you just never know. They may mention board members' name. We try to make sure we always make sure we redact anything that has personnel related.
Hey, Dr. Mickle, you can see a copy of that on page 23 also at the very top, those questions that we'll utilize.
Yeah.
So
We redact anything that's related to personnel. But I would tell you that doesn't mean if it's an open forum. It's an open forum. So you'll hear the good with the bad in an open survey.
Mr. President, have we issued the values? Has those gone out to the public as final or
No,
no?
not yet. I think it's an important data set to consider for the superintendent, but
might be to Nicole's question, because I can't quite see your last name, I'm sorry. It might be to her question that we could utilize, depending on when we gave that, we could utilize that survey as one piece of data, depending on the questions. So that we're not going back to the same folks asking, they're probably different, but yet probably
I think
similar
there
in
is some
nature.
overlap.
I'm sure
I think there
is.
is overlap, and if we could not have redundancy between
So
those.
let me, I'll take a look at that and let you know. And so that's an easy shift, whether we want to give it or we want to say, hey, we're going to utilize the data we already have in hand. That's pretty common. We do climate surveys as well for other districts, and we just weave that in. So
The other thing I was kind of wondering about, because when that values study was done, we did focus groups too. And if it would be good to call the same focus groups, or if we should call different people, or kind of have the same ones, but allow new people in if they wanted, or,
were they your key stakeholder groups?
yeah, it was the same type of thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you want to tap into a different group, but also maybe some of those other key people that are there to kind of keep some, because the people that you hear from that are dedicated to your district, have great feedback and really provide great support to you. But we also want to make sure that we make that a process that encompasses all stakeholders as well. So we can be thoughtful about that. Yeah.
So during our last meeting, we'd also just kind of discussed not that any one group is more important when it comes to stakeholders, but the people that work the closest with Dr. Burke are principals, administrators. And if I'm understanding this correctly, they would be a part of a focus group, but we wouldn't know that it was their feedback. And so I'm not sure. I would like to be able to talk with them and hear from them, because they do work so closely with the superintendent. So.
If the thing about this
isn't about Dr. Burke, though.
No, I'm saying just using him as an example. As the superintendent position, they work the closest with whoever the superintendent might be. So I would love to get their feedback and their insight. I think they have the most unique insight and daily interaction from what he's said and what they have said too.
Well, and that's a great question. I do think that when you get down to when you interview candidates, then they definitely, part of your interview day is they get to spend time with the administrative team. So the administrative team will meet them face to face in a conversation. There's two advantages of the characteristics forums. One is you're asking for people to give you input. People like to ask to share their opinion. They like to be asked, but it's an executive decision. That's why they call that an input decision. They're going to give you their input, but the board is ultimately the people that will decide. And so that's the executive role that you play in this situation. So a value survey, what's important to us as a community, are a great set of questions. What's important to us in our new superintendent may be a little bit different, and you'll have to look through that. There's an overlap in what we value. Okay. But now you're asking specific skills that you desire in this new superintendent. So, and then the reason, and that's a great question. The reason we separate that is because we want them to be open and honest with us. And if we identify who says what, and sometimes, for instance, the students always can be identified. They always want different lunches. right? I mean, everybody knows that's the students. But if we say, well, we're gonna tell that the administrator said this, then we may not get the same answers. Well, the teachers told us this, well, then we may not get the same answers. So you'll get a list of answers from each group, but we wouldn't necessarily identify them. Now, if you have a request, then we would do that. But we would say, by the way, each identified group, you will be identified to the board as we walk through those characteristics.
Well, and maybe I should clarify, maybe it's something separate than from the focus group. I don't need to know exactly what questions you asked them. I'm just hoping for opportunity that we might have as a board to talk with them, almost just dialogue with them and follow up on it. Because I don't know, I would probably have follow-up questions from just presented information. So I don't know that we would need to know who said what in that.
Yeah.
But I would really like to somehow involve them and get an opportunity to dialogue with them. So.
We're intending to have them be a part of the interview process. So I mean, they would be able to, that would be individual one-on-one specific folks that we could have a conversation around. They're going to provide input on each interview as well. And I think it is critical because we have to know what characteristics they're after.
Yeah, what they think would work best.
Yeah, and so I think we get that data that's pooled together, and then we're going to see when we do the interviews, we're going to have more of a direct one-on-one interaction with administration than we would with the survey.
Yeah, and that's just what I'm looking for, is making sure that we have
Yeah.
a lot of
Oh yeah,
interaction with them.
it's really important that.
I don't mean to jump, but if you go to page 26, that is a sample of what a day could look like. And then you would be able to get some feedback from the administrators if you do something like that.
On the finalists.
Yeah, on the finalist.
Also 27, 28 will give you some things to kind of review and ponder. So, Mr. Updike, would it be tomorrow, I'd probably need to review that other survey and see if there's enough differences we're mentioning, and have a conversation with you. If we feel like there's a significant amount of difference and we're not overlapping, is the desire of the board to send out the survey. If there's some commonality, we'd probably say, hey, we'll utilize the prior survey as a piece of data.
Right, sure. Well, I assume we can use the prior survey regardless.
Yeah.
Right, and then the survey that would go out would be in addition to, Christopher is our communications director, and he's probably, well, you have the data, right?
Correct, yeah. I think we have the data.
And then the questions are, from what I see here, and what we're looking at, the questions are simple. These questions are very focused on the search for a superintendent.
Christopher, you're going to need to come up front because you got to remember we have an audience. Got a board member.
The questions in the value study survey are significantly different than the questions that I see in your guidebook here. The questions in the guidebook are very specifically targeted to the qualities of a superintendent. And in the value study survey, we asked for qualities of our community and of our schools and of our students, but not really about our leadership. So there's not a lot of feedback in the value study survey about leadership. And this would give us the opportunity to get some specific feedback on that.
So would the value study be more something to put out to the potential candidates to show them who we are?
One of the things that I had kind of in my mind is that some information that I think would be really valuable for the candidates would be our strategic plan publication, which I just finished the full draft of, and then our information about our values campaign, which I was hoping to have finished by January 31st. So I think that those, when we're putting together the marketing materials that we would share with candidates, I think both of those would be critical pieces because they can then see if their values align with our values. Because one of the things about values is you can't really change someone's values very easily. So it would help us align what we are looking for in the superintendent. so they can see, oh, this is what Spring Hill values. Those values line up with what I value. It would be a great place for me to apply.
It's a great marketing tool to find the right match.
Good. That's good insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
So I think we finalized the survey. Let's talk a little bit about that 31st January, that the date that we want to secure for that focus groups. Are there groups that maybe you used last time that you didn't use last time that you would give feedback to our team and also the clerk as we identify what that schedule looks like? Who would be those desired individuals or groups that you want to make sure we hit?
I think you had a good breakdown of it. I think students, teachers, staff, administration, within the walls of the district. I think parents and patrons are two more stakeholder groups. We think about businesses. What are
So you had like a chamber group,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if you considered them patrons.
Generally you bring in your community chamber. You bring them into a luncheon. And then you meet with them during lunch, because that's when it works into their daily lives. And we generally interview students at the end of the day. I don't know what the end of the day looks like for you guys now. Who knows what the role looks like, but generally it's something around 3:30 or 4.
Normally the kids are good anytime if they can skip class, but we try to, obviously we try to maintain that so they don't, so.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So other
And then
stakeholder groups? That's a big list. Seems comprehensive, but 6 groups. Yeah.
Yep.
6 groups. And anything else other?
We will probably end up helping with this. Do you want us to use those same people? Do you want us to
I
expand that? What are you thinking? Because we kept those numbers, Brad, you may have to tell me, 10 to 15 each group.
So those groups, each one of us picked a couple of people, but we have new board members now. So I wonder if we could give you names again, just so that everybody is having a voice in that.
Yeah. I would think
Or
if the
just a-
core with the groups are the same, but you add some new people in, if people have some new recommendations for people, or all those people might not want to do it again.
That's true.
So,
And we
yeah,
have 2
Keith
new.
and Nicole could certainly provide a few names.
the key is that the board gets to hear from the people they'd like to hear from.
Mhm.
A lot of those groups already exist. You have building leadership teams in each building.
Mhm.
They already exist. You have site councils in each building. They exist. You have community members, you have a Chamber of Commerce, Optimist, you pick the organization. They exist. Student council, student leadership groups. So a lot of those groups already are there. The teachers have, and then of course your admin team. So they exist already, and then you can organize and choose around those.
What were the 6 again? Would you list those for me?
Students, teachers, admin, parents, patrons, chamber. Patrons was purely board members. So board members gave us names.
Right.
And I think you gave us 2 or 3 names.
Mhm.
I think it was 2. but-
So what we could do is we'll send you that list again,
Yeah, that's
and
a
then
good
you
idea.
can tell us if you want.
We could contact those folks and see if
Yeah.
they were still interested.
And then that would
Yeah.
give Keith and Nicole an opportunity to add names to that group as well.
That's a good idea.
I just want to be sure that they.
Other thoughts on the day that we would come back with the finalist and also the interview dates?
So I'm probably putting too much of my 2 cents in, but
It's okay.
the 21st, I don't,
It's President's Day.
I sorry to say, we don't have, but you could have a board meeting that night. I don't know how that falls on your schedule. Because we do not have a rule that says you can't meet on the 21st. So I'm just throwing a date. You don't have a board meeting that night. The other thing I was going to say is you probably need to get your schedules together as soon as possible, because you are 7 very busy people.
Yeah.
And if, the one thing I would say is I would do your interviews consecutive nights. Because if you do a couple and then you wait for the weekend and then you do a couple more, those of you who have sit on the interviews and when all that information just overwhelms you night after night, but then you put a 2-day break in there, sometimes it kind of.
I guess it depends on if we're doing 3 or 5 or how many we're doing with consecutive. I mean, the 21st, so I will be out of town because we're out of school that day. So we're out of town.
So.
The only thing I'm really scheduling around right now is basketball because and I know may sound petty, but my kid's a senior and I don't want to miss any of his basketball games. So that's.
So what dates, if we can't have a date, we need to have an alternate. You can't oppose unless you propose. So
Wednesdays are normally good, but I know that might be church night for some people. That's usually good for me. Tuesdays and Fridays are usually the basketball games.
We use that on 221 for special meeting.
That's what we're
No.
talking about right now.
Well,
So
Ally said she wasn't going to be
I
here.
think, did you say you're out of town too?
Is that the long weekend?
Yeah, President's Day weekend.
I should be back. It should be.
yeah, but we want to make sure all 7 Fs are here. I think it's
Right.
important that all 7 Fs are through the whole process. So
So the February 23rd would work or the
I've seen-
24th.
Not to argue, Choral Masterworks concert. Does that affect anybody?
What night is that?
Wednesday, the 23rd.
The 23rd works for me.
23rd?
Yeah.
Right?
Keith, is he on there?
I can be there the 23rd.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You good?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Check.
Thanks, Keith. And you were okay? with
Okay.
Nels, you okay with the 23rd?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. So we change that from the 21st to the 23rd.
hold on, Mr. Updike, just a second.
Oh, okay.
Is the 20, this is the hard part is trying to get, so
Sure.
Dr. Meckel and I both have a board meeting on the 23rd.
24th would work for me as well.
24th works for me as well.
Me too.
24, does that,
Works. It works. I'm not gonna speak. It works for me, yes.
24th is good.
Nicole? 24th is okay? And you were okay?
Yeah,
with
24th is fine with me. Is
Keith?
Keith, does that work for you, the 24th February?
Yes,
that? Right?
yes, I can be there the 24th.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
I think that'll work. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Elizabeth's birthday, so bubbling you guys.
It's your birthday.
And that might align nicely with the interviews. If you keep the interviews Monday through Friday, depending on whether you do 3 or 5. That way that turnaround will be pretty short there. So you contact the candidates either Thursday night or Friday morning and let them know the availability and get them scheduled that following week.
So it'd be the 28th through the 4th
Yeah.
would be the
Now,
week. Is that right?
I did bring those dates you and I talked about as far as basketball. Is it a boys basketball player?
Yeah, sub-state.
And so boys sub-states on the 1st and the 4th potentially, depending on how.
We don't have to worry about the
Oh, really? Okay. But anyway, so, okay. I did come prepared for that. So it is the 1st and 4th. The girls would happen to be on the 2nd and 5th if there is any conflict there.
On is it March 2nd? You have a winter orchestra concert. Does that affect anybody? Okay.
So it sounds like the week of what is that, the 28th to the 4th would work for interviews. Is that
Which week?
the week of February
28th
28th to March 4th?
Okay.
The first week of March.
Try to avoid the first.
Yeah, so pretty much that on night would be the first. And maybe,
The first of the month is always hard for me, but I'm available in the evenings because it sounds like we'll have consecutive days except for that Friday. The middle school has a play performance.
On February or March 4th.
You guys have school all those days as well?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I think I looked at that, but that'll be important as they make some tours around the district, go into buildings, visit with admin, et cetera, that, yeah.
We've got an AM board meeting on the 28th.
Yeah, that should be it. That's a 7 a.m. meeting.
It's a morning meeting.
Good.
Well, we've done, and this past year we had a meeting in the morning and then one in the evening once, so we've done that.
Yeah, we're used to that.
Yeah, we're good.
So it sounds like 28th through the 3rd.
Okay.
Or 4th if, we want to make sure that, so the 4th we have a
The
conflict.
middle school play, right?
Yeah.
So 28th through the 3rd. So that says there's a decision to make there. Do we limit it to 4?
Oh,
Do we move it on to, pardon me?
Or 3 even.
I would suggest you go ahead and keep these dates and then look once the candidates get there.
See, I was gonna say, let's schedule the 28th to the 4th.
Mhm.
And if there's only 3 or 2 that we really want to interview, then we've got the time blocked out. We've got it captured and we
Lock
can go
up the
from-
dates and then you can worry about it.
and then do we have if we went through the 4th, just as an example, do we then meet at the end of the last meeting to discuss, or do we have another meeting to make the decision?
So to answer your question on the 24th, it'll take probably about 60 to 90 minutes, maybe a little bit more, depending on the depth of the candidate pool. We're going to really talk about each candidate into depth and then talk kind of like we outlined earlier, what we feel like that top tier of finalists that you should consider. Normally we answer questions, we kind of go through all the characteristics, how they align and all the references so that you have all that information. And then we're going to step out. Most boards at that point, continue that conversation for 30 minutes to an hour to say, hey, do we have the right list? Do we have the right candidates that we're bringing in? Some, say, hey, it's been a long day and we want to kind of think on it and come back the next day. So that Friday, if you will, to finalize that, work directly with the clerk to, most of the time, the board president, the clerk says, hey, here's the people that we've identified. Let's get them on the phone, see if we can get that schedule built for, let's say, Monday through Thursday. If you decide to do 5 at that point, that's probably where you'll have to make a decision to say, do we want to use the Friday, the 25th? Do we want to, do a little bit different schedule for the 4th? What are our options there if there is a 5th candidate we really like to engage? And so I think right now you have a schedule that's flexible to kind of go either way, depending on whether you have 3 or 5 or what you decide as a board. You have some autonomy to make some shift if you need it.
So if we were to interview people March 28th through February 4th, do we then meet after that, like on the 7th or 8th, or like when are to make the decision after we've interviewed all of them? I'm just looking at calendars.
What we recommend, and it's a recommendation, is that you have the conversation only after you've met all candidates. In other words, don't debrief after each one. And then you've set the stage to skew the next interview. So you have your thoughts, you have your data, you have your ranking in your mind, and then the next night, you start again and you go through that process. Then the final night is when, after you've interviewed, if it's been a long day and a long time, you may want to come back together. There on occasion, people literally decide that night, we interviewed these 4 people and Dr. Jones is by far the best candidate. That happens that night. On other occasions, let's come back together tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and we'll talk about it. So that really is the board. Once you get to the interview stage, it is literally how the board wants to proceed. I mean, it really is, because the decisions are yours at that point.
I just didn't know if we needed to plan ahead to give notice of a meeting and.
I think
Get
we
a
should.
meeting on the
Yeah,
books
I
for
think-
Monday or something.
Absolutely. I think we should.
Uh-huh.
Because it's going to be, I'll tell you right now, I'm going to want to think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where my head's going to be. I'm real sure of that. Unless somebody just is, way better. But so, yeah, I think that's a good recommendation to get
Like maybe Monday, the 7th would be kind of our night to come together in an executive session, right? To discuss what we had interviewed and,
You've got it.
Wouldn't that be when we wanted to make the announcement though on the?
well, if we're having interviews up until Friday.
Yeah, or at least offer a contract or something, because the 5th wouldn't, I don't know. I don't know how long you want to wait.
I thought we were looking at interviews through that Friday.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, you already have a board meeting scheduled for March 7th.
Mhm.
So I'd say we just add an executive session to that agenda on the
Yeah.
7th.
Okay.
Then we can,
Because if you feel like, if you do three candidates and then you have 4 nights, then you could do it on the 4th night.
Mhm.
If you decide you want more candidates or you need time to think, you just put an executive session on Monday. And we'll cut down the agenda on that night just so that you have more time.
Mhm.
Is that 'cause of the 14th?
Mhm.
You do or don't.
In my calendar, I have meetings in March on 14th.
Well, the 14th is spring break and so, yeah, I think. we're moving.
Yeah, it should be March 7th.
Good dialogue. Other thoughts on the timeline before we just kind of wrap up for questions? And I want to highlight just a couple small things on page 21. I would encourage you between now and when we come back on the 31st, just have an opportunity to kind of review really phase 3 in the sense of what do the interviews look like? What could they be set up like? Kind of maybe even bring some questions with you to say, hey, here's what my desire would be as a board member to the experience coming into the district. What do we want these candidates to be able to experience and do and see and meet as they come? There's also a couple other pieces. We're going to review these a little bit more in depth on 31st, but questions not to ask, things about whose role it is and how do we want to direct, in this case, either board president or somebody that's going to be designated to say, what is our salary range? What are our fringe benefits? What is the process to secure that top candidate when we're ready as a board? So have some of those discussions. We'll also prepare a salary comparison for you to kind of process at that point. And then when we come back that final time in executive session, you could have a little bit more conversation about what does that salary look like, in a place of confidence. And so we'll do that pretty general when we come back on the 31st, but want to give you that information, then give you some time to process that. And like you said, Mr. Updike, have some time to be thoughtful, to ask your questions and kind of have some more dialogue as a board. So.
any comments or, yeah.
And I think that we'll probably want to work on that contract ahead of time, wouldn't we? To work in parallel with the effort.
Yeah. I think that's part of the,
Assuming
that's on the 30.
Mr. Gohan worked on that. Assuming.
Yeah, we'd need Mr. Goheen to review it. And so you're saying to move up the contract information earlier?
Well, I just meant, assume we were kind of worked ahead and had that mostly done, and then we're waiting on salary comparisons. And
Yeah.
I would like to compare the contract you have to what we've been using, because that thing's been around a while. I know when Bart left and you came on, we found some things that we wanted to change then.
Mine's much different than Bart's.
yeah,
Yes, it is. It is.
Do you want me to send that to Mr. Updike or Katie, or how do you prefer that? We can send you what we have, or you can send us yours for our attorneys to review, or have Greg review it as well, whatever your desire is.
Well, why don't you send it to Katie?
Okay.
And we'll ask her to send it out to the board and Mr. Goheen.
Do you want a copy of mine as well? Because there were some things that the board specifically put into mine that was not in the previous. There were some concerns that you have that things are written a certain way in there for a reason.
Yes.
Is that where you're going with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we have what we're current state and potential future state.
Well, and what you'll hear from me and or whoever is, or Art, this is the start of a relationship. And whoever you interview is going to try to convince you that this is where they want to be and they're the right fit. Part of your job is to make sure you're who we want here and you're the right fit. And so those are the discussions you have, and that comes through in how you negotiate. I would say the conversations you have are the first start to the relationship, and as you interview all candidates, and from then on, then away you go. So
to you.
Okay, just as a recap, because as you know, calendars are crazy. So we have February 24th for a meeting. And then we have kind of board week, February 28th through March 4th. And then we have board meetings in March on the 7th and the 28th. Does that sound right?
It's the 21st.
We only have one board. We only have one board meeting in March. Unless you want to add a second one.
I thought for some reason we had scheduled one the 28th. I put it in here, but I'll take it out.
And you have January 20 or 31st as well, correct?
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
focus groups.
Yep,
And
don't you forget
Yes,
that.
so January 31st, February. We already have a board meeting the 14th, and then we'll have one the 24th, and then board week is kind of the 28th through the 4th.
So Candy, we will need to get February 24th on the agenda.
Yes.
And then those other interview dates on the agenda for Monday.
On whose agenda?
We have a board meeting Monday morning. And the board will need to vote on all these dates.
Then we go to San Diego. We're gonna spend a lot of time together.
Has the list of the focus groups. Because we need to send that out tomorrow morning to the board on the focus groups so they can look at them to see if that's who they want or if they want to add people. And I don't know who has the focus groups.
I can certainly type up a schedule for you.
No, she's talking about the actual people on the group.
The actual people.
I may have them or Brian Jordan. Between the two of us, we'll get them to you.
How are the teachers and staff chosen for that? How were they chosen before?
I think we just asked the principals to give us a couple names. And we made sure that we have representation from
Great.
every school being,
Right. Or, yeah, every school needs to have some representation.
because we had somebody from learning, the Early Learning Academy, and then I think we had 2 from there, and then I think we had 2 from every building. So I think we have 12 to 14. I'll see if I can find that while we're talking.
Yes, generally selected from your building leadership teams, because every building has them. So-
That's what I remember, that the principals selected them.
And then as far as the high school students, are we planning to use our board? What are we calling it?
Advocates. or-
Yeah, thank you, yes.
Yeah, the group that was here.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be a great.
and they would, just through those experiences, they probably have a better, broader understanding of what students.
Yeah, because there were seniors in that group that are now gone,
Yeah,
because that would have been last year.
well, that's true.
So
You probably won't hear about lunches from them. They understand.
They've learned.
That is one of the best groups to talk to, though. It's enjoyable for sure.
Anything else? What else? Where's the blind spot? What are we missing?
We'll get into a little deeper on the 31st, a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of the remainder of the process. Certainly, if you have questions, I would encourage you to send those to Mr. Updike, and we can certainly give you dialogue between now and then if you need to. And there's no reason to have to wait until we come back if there's something that you have a question about or want us to be aware of, as we're making sure this is a process that best suits your needs.
The biggest blind spot in response, on occasion, people, I always talk about reviewing your packet. Read through this notebook and it will guide you step by step. On occasion, people don't. I know it's hard. I know you're looking at me like, no, that's not possible. On occasion, some people don't read this notebook and it creates a different set of challenges. This answers basically every question related to the steps. And it also creates questions for you to ask us. So that would be, we used to call that your homework back before we personalized your homework. So.
I had a thought on something I read in there. It's about the cultural noise. I don't know if anybody else saw that header. In today's environment, a candidate can research our whole district on the website and know everything about us and tell us whatever we want to hear, because it's very easy for them to dig it up. So, but at the same time, it's almost taboo to ask hard questions. So if you ask weak questions, you get weak answers. So I'm going to need some coaching on where that line is. Because I will ask the question that you're not supposed to ask.
They're also gonna do some of that background
Yeah,
check into
I'm
that.
just, that's gonna be something hard for me. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. Matter of fact, we encourage every candidate to get to know the district, the potential districts they want to look at. You know, they don't want, they need to know everything they can. They should be reading your minutes. They should be reading your local news, your Facebook, whatever it is you communicate. They should drive through the community. They should see the building. They should know you before they ever sit down. The key for you is a line of those questions. Those are all vetted and they're all legal. Pick which questions align to the board's values. You just did a value survey, so you should have a pretty good idea what your community's thinking. Then you can't go wrong on your questions. And this is probably a topic for a later evening, but two things to remember. Our job is to make sure they've demonstrated past performance. So you're not going to get somebody who's just good at interviewing. That's, yeah, and there are resumes that would just you go, oh my gosh, this guy should be president. But it's just a resume. It doesn't mean they have backed the skills up. So that's part of our job, to help you interview candidates that can have a proven work record. Okay. The other thing is that you have to process and delve. So we've selected 21 questions and we may get asked 8 of them because we've delved. We've said, but perfect example. Well, MTSS is a great tool to impact kids. Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit more about how you've implemented MTSS. MTSS is a great tool. It really makes it. So we want to make sure that's not the candidate that we give you, but your job is to ask hard questions, and you're right, legal hard questions. That's your job. Then you'll find out the candidate that you want.
We will spend some time on that. I think it's the 24th. The meeting prior, we'll talk about those questions, start to think about how they align with the characteristics, the values. But then on the 24th, review those a final time. So you've had some time in between there to think about those. What would that look like if we asked that and got some depth? Do they have the experience, not just be able to answer the question, but give us some experience that this has actually been carried out? How have you led this MTSS process? If we stay on that, who have you involved? How are the principals involved? How's it get down to the teacher level? And so I think once we get to that point, I think you'll start to feel a little bit more comfortable as you see the questions, think about what and how we can dive down a little bit deeper, but also how they really reflect on what you hope to gain as far as the outcome of the individuals themselves. So those kind of start to sync up. And if you don't do it every day, I can appreciate it's like, but certainly we'll try to help you along the way to make that happen. So.
sounds good.
Well, thank you, folks. We appreciate your time. I know it's another night out, and appreciate you taking time to dedicate it.
Very good. Thank you for coming in.
Yep.